Hello and welcome to Beyond the Noise, the podcast series from PRWeek. I'm Siobhan Holt, news editor at PRWeek UK, and today I'm joined by my PRWeek colleague, Danny Rogers, editor-in-chief. How are you, Danny?
I'm very good, thanks, Siobhan, yeah.
How was your bank holiday? Relaxed?
Bank holiday, I watched too much football, much to the annoyance of my family. I went to see Chelsea play Liverpool and Crystal Palace play Nottingham Forest.
That is a very football-heavy weekend.
I know. It was good, though. I enjoyed it.
And the weather was good for it?
It was until last night, which was the Forest game, which was freezing, actually. But there you go.
Well, at least you know we stand with British weather. Today we're going to talk about the launch of our biggest editorial project of the year, the PRWeek UK Top 150 Consultancies. For those that don't know, this is our annual ranking of the UK's biggest comms agencies in the most recent calendar year by PR revenue. Throughout May, we'll also be revealing the biggest agencies by different sectors, alongside other tables like the fastest growing, the newest agencies, the biggest outside of London, and so on. So keep a lookout on prweek.co.uk. The project gives us a really good overview of what's happening in the consultancy world, and we're going to dig into some of the main findings today. So let's begin by looking at the top line first, and the overall picture is one of a challenging year. Overall aggregate growth in the top 150 was 3.1%, which is down from 6.8% in 2023, and is way below the strong growth which we saw post-COVID. That was at 19.2% in 2021 and 15.2% in 2022. Some other salient stats: 43 of the 150 agencies actually saw their revenue decline last year, and that's versus 31 in 2023. What stood out to you then, Danny, from these stats so far?
Well, I'm going to read out a couple of quotes from a couple of the bosses that we interviewed for the Top 150, which gives an insight into what sort of year it was. So John Waples, who's the boss of FTI in London, said there was less M&A, mergers acquisitions, he means, last year, less capital markets activity and fewer special situations, which had really made 23 a real bonanza. The world looked a bit different in 24. It was more challenging. The US had a phenomenal run, which helped make the overall picture better, but EMEA and the UK definitely found it a more challenging market, mainly because the expectations were so high. Arlo Brady, the CEO of Freud's, said last year wasn't a vintage year. It was fairly flat, largely as a result of uncertainty, I would say, on both sides of the Atlantic. Clients weren't sure what the direction of travel was, leading to quite a lot of cautiousness. So overall, of course, 2024 was a tough year for many, and the downturn was, somewhat unusually in my experience, across many different sectors this time, and for different reasons. I know we're going to break it down by sector in a minute, but in summary, you could see this anecdotally through conversations I've had with clients and agency bosses, as well as empirically throughout the year, but there was three things really. First, consumer spending was hit by low economic growth, high inflation, high interest rates last year. Secondly, the London stock markets were subdued, including a lack of M&A activity and flotations. And thirdly, unusually, both technology and healthcare were also hit for the reasons above, plus several other factors affecting those sectors, which I'm sure we'll go into. Having said that, some areas were buoyant. I mean, corporate crisis, reputation, public affairs work was certainly in high demand last year, and it still is. And you only have to look at what's happening at M&S, Co-op, Harrods over the last couple of weeks to see the need for good corporate responses to difficult situations. And interestingly, travel and luxury hospitality enjoyed a bumper year last year. So as ever, some specialists did very well.
Yeah, and I've tried to speak to some industry people just to find out a bit more as well. And one sort of said that, obviously, as you say, the consensus across the industry was that 2024 was really tough. And that's particularly for the larger network agencies. They were particularly hit by reduced spending from the Middle East clients. And we've seen a boom in the Middle East in comparison.
Yeah.
So I do think that there is that trend. And obviously we've had the UK general election, which definitely caused uncertainty. There was mixed consumer and business sentiment. And then as a result, it meant that clients were spending less and pitches became way more competitive. But it's not all been doom and gloom, although consumer has been quite mixed. Nicola Dodd, who is Managing Director of Ogle PR in the UK, she actually labelled 2024 as a really good year for the agency, and their UK revenue rose by an estimated 23% to 58.8 million. She points to the performance of offers such as Influence Shield, which brings together the agency's influencer specialisms with brand reputation. she said those sorts of things have been super successful for us. And I've heard other agencies credit their influencer marketing as an area of growth in the consumer division. But consumer, if we're looking specifically at that sector, it was a mixed picture overall. There was quite a few well-established agencies struggling with smaller growth or were flat or in slight decline. Brazen MD Sasha Makel pointed to the industry trend of PR budgets being cut, projects being awarded in place of retainers, and pitch conversions taking longer than ever. She also highlighted the headwinds of economic uncertainty, which I know anecdotally we've all heard that, haven't we? Others did continue to report strong growth though. So the likes of the Romans were up 43%, Manifest 37%, Taylor Herring 36%, Pretty Green 19%, and Exposure 17%. So some really strong results there. What do you make though of consumer comms?
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? It was notable to see some of the more established consumer independents, as you say, like Taylor Herring, Romans, Exposure and so on, enjoyed a really good year last year. And I'm wondering whether that was because they've adapted better to the new trends in marketing and influence, possibly offering more integrated offerings than some of maybe the smaller consumer firms. Obviously, the larger consumer firms had a mixed bag as well. I think Weber did okay, actually, in consumer. Others, like Ketchum, Fleischmann, looks less good. So, yeah, interesting picture on consumer, really, a real mixed.
Yeah, and as they say, I think it is a mixture of factors. I think there's definitely been a switch to more project-based work, which maybe the smaller agencies are easier to adapt to. I think it's a broader case of what they want in consumer to get that press coverage that's going to get you the results for your client, whether that's social, right up to traditional, as well as media and TV. It's so broad now. So I think that sort of integrated approach is definitely going to be a real strength of some of these agencies that we've just listed there. And I think, maybe it's just easier to adapt. And then obviously you've got people like the Romans that have corporate now. They've invested in those sort of divisions they did that about a year or so ago. So yeah, I think it's maybe rolling with the punches is easier for a smaller agency than some of the bigger network ones.
Yeah, I guess also the Romans, they are sort of integrated with Mother to a certain extent. Taylor Herring are now part of Publicis Group. Exposure are quite an integrated group. So maybe, that's the advantage that some of these agencies have. They've got marketing and content arms naturally.
Yeah, that they can draw on when needed.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah. Moving on now, the difficult period for tech PR seemed to continue. The specialism had a difficult 2023, which we reported on, and we saw the cutbacks by tech giants globally from 2022 onwards. Rachel Gilly, CEO at Clarity, described 2024 as brutal, which is a big statement. She said the climate of inflation and interest rates, overlaid with the technology industry slump after the overhiring during COVID, was hard for industry leaders. And she also said very similarly to consumer, really, the reasons, sort of client relationships putting pressure, delayed payments, ghosting. A lot of the problems that we hear quite across the board seem to be impacting tech as well. Similar problems in healthcare as well, weren't there, Danny?
Yes, it seems like the biggest healthcare agencies, what was a slight uplift in 2023 turned into a slight downturn in 2024. Inconsistent is how Lucy Harper, president at Real Chemistry, described UK trading in 2024. She said, some areas of work expanded, media relations, thought leadership and issues management, while others contracted, disease awareness and market shaping campaigns and so on. The biggest opportunity for growth, she said, were created when agencies worked smarter across disciplines and when work could demonstrate rapid value. However, both healthcare and tech did see some exceptions to that rule. Smaller agencies like RAM Marketing have done very well. And I wonder whether smaller agencies are taking home some of the accounts from big players. Yeah, I think, it is unusual that both tech and healthcare would have another bad year. Usually, at least one of them has a good year. And I thought Rachel Gilly summed it up very well for tech PR. Even well-run, successful, established tech agencies like Brands to Life, for example, didn't see their usual growth. So it's been tricky after a couple of decades of solid and steady growth in tech. There does seem to be perhaps a number of economic and business reasons post-COVID, like you were saying. But I think possibly the AI revolution has had a big impact on tech firms. They seem to be trying to adapt their business models to this new paradigm and maybe investing more in that than marketing.
Yeah, and maybe that is impacting them financially, but it means that we might be talking about them in a more positive light come next year. Let's move on to more positive news. Public affairs seem to have benefited from the political upheaval. So that's, the new government here and internationally as well. It was
Certainly.
a record bumper year for elections.
Certainly turmoil politically.
Yeah. But as a result, several agencies outperformed on the top 150. Stephen Pomeroy, founder of Cavendish, told PRWeek that UK public affairs consultancies have largely posted strong performances this year, driven by the election of a new government and the legislative agenda that has followed. Geopolitical uncertainty and changing political dynamics across an evolving political international landscape has also added to the demand for trusted counsel, which I think we can definitely agree with. Mm-hmm. He also credited agencies for investing in the right talent and so on ahead of this year. And it looks like all those high-profile hires, particularly from the Labour backgrounds, may have actually paid off.
Yeah, I mean, what a huge political year 2024 was, eh?
Yep.
Elections almost everywhere around the world, which meant lots of new governments, lots of new national policies. And of course, business had to try and understand what those policies were going to be, how they had to adapt. So the need for public affairs and policy advice was sky high. And most dramatic of all was Trump's re-election in November last year. This last 18 months is the definition of geopolitical and geo-economic upheaval.
Yeah.
And with the tariffs and everything happening at the moment, day by day, then the work for public affairs and all that is going to be sky high again, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the knock-on effect of that as well, because you've got other businesses, car manufacturing just giving you one, pharmaceutical, it's going to impact all those other sectors as well.
Yeah, I see. Today, topically, he's announced that filming isn't going to be allowed outside the States, and it could impact the British film industry in a huge way, and also other film industries as well. Another example of how it changes day by day.
What we saw was the return of real growth in the top 150. Adjusted for inflation, growth was 0.6%. It was flat in 2023 due to a higher inflation that year. Average profit margin also lifted slightly from a mean average of 17.4% to 17.8%. What are your thoughts on cost pressures then at agencies in 2024, Danny? Do you think they're profitable enough?
I think agencies have been clearly forced to work hard on their profitability, which hasn't been easy. I mean, the cost base has continued to grow, hasn't it? Salary inflation may have slowed, but then you had Labour's national insurance bombshell last autumn, which kicked in April. However, it does seem that PR agencies are now much better run than they were, say, 20 years ago when I joined PRWeek as editor. So I think they're becoming smarter, better run businesses, and therefore you're seeing a better profit margin.
Yeah, even anecdotally, we've definitely heard there's been job cuts in the industry. So they're not afraid to achieve that profitability if they need to.
Yeah, very true.
Okay, we're going to end by looking at confidence for the year ahead. So as part of the survey, we asked whether they are confident that this year will be a better year for UK trading than the previous one. 11.4% responded in the negative, and that's actually up from 8.8% a year ago when PR firms were asked about what they thought 2024 would be like. But the vast majority do expect 2025 to be better. 62% were moderately confident that 2025 will be better than the previous year, and 27.5% were very confident. What kind of things are agencies saying about the year ahead then, Danny?
Yeah, well, it's touch and go, isn't it? And this was particularly interesting to read in our report. I was encouraged by ACT Health Communications, who predicted, "We are seeing increased confidence from clients to sign off greater budgets and deliver more ambitious programs of work. We have a particular focus on leveraging and creating social media channels to help shape reputation, alongside greater emphasis on corporate communications from pharma clients." That sounds very good. And for me, Wildfire summed it up confidently and professionally, saying, "We are operationally sound. We have a strong base of retained clients for recurring fee income. Our new business pipeline is looking solid, and we have a team motivated by our collective ambition to grow." So, they sound confident anyway.
Yeah, they do. Some were a bit more mixed. PLMR Group said they described their agency as being resilient, which I thought was great, and that they're an excellent team of delivering quality, impactful work, and that they've diversified the offer with several of their strongest practices in sectors that are growing. However, they did say that the UK economy is performing weakly overall and business confidence is low. Growth is looking sluggish and costs have been added to businesses, and they were referring to both theirs and their clients, and all of that will have an impact. What I noticed, or what stood out to me, was a lot of people seem to talk about their sort of investment in measurement or really focusing on measurement. And I think that is going to be the key for PR.
Yeah, well, I mean, if their clients are saying we want you to prove your ROI, to prove their ROI, they have to invest in measurement and analysis.
The Hoffman Agency said that it's been difficult for the past few years. 2022 was the last truly vibrant year for the industry. They said that the start of 2025 had suggested this will return to those days, which is hopeful. But they did say the difficulties of 2023 and 24 might now be the norm. But to end on a more positive note, an anonymous respondent said last year was slow because of the UK general election, US election and the budget, but that they're hoping for a better year this year and momentum seems to be starting better from January.
Yeah, that seems like the more typical response, really. Hope without absolute confidence, but hope nevertheless.
Very, very typical of this comms industry to go for the middle ground. But let's wrap it up then. How confident are you that 2025 will be better for a year for trading then?
On a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, go on.
I'd say about 6. I mean, I was tempted to say be really pessimistic, but then when you read this report and you see how well companies are adapting in the PR industry, the PR industry always adapts well to uncertainty. PR agencies always find opportunities within difficulty. And bearing in mind that it also showed that PR agencies are better run, they're protecting their margins despite difficult top line, I'd say 6 out of 10. I think it's going to be a better year than 2024, but because second half of the year, we've got to get through this tariffs stuff because it's creating so much uncertainty. I mean, the good news is that interest rates are coming down in the UK, and that should help people feel better off.
Yes.
But you're never quite sure what Donald Trump's going to hit us with next.
No, exactly. And yeah, if I had to predict it, I was going to pick 5, and it wasn't necessarily because of the industry per se. It's exactly as you say, it's the tariffs. I just think there's so much uncertainty that it just puts doubt in it. But the industry's very scrappy. Yeah. And I like that about them, that they will keep trying. Yeah. And
we'll be all right, guys.
Yeah, they'll hunt for that work. Okay, that's all we have time for. As I said, stay tuned to prweek.co.uk all this month for the top 150 insights and analysis, including those sector tables, guys. I know you're very keen on them. Thanks to Danny for sharing his thoughts. If you've enjoyed today's episode, then we'd love it if you could leave a review, please, wherever you access PR Week's Beyond the Noise podcast. And until next time, thanks for listening and goodbye.